Hello there. What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about Star Wars Armada Clone Wars possible commanders. So this is going to be a really fun discussion. But first, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor for the week, Rainbow Starlight, with their new game, Expansive Universe, actually launches today. If you want to check it out or pick up a copy, you can check the links in the description below. Also, I did a gameplay preview for Expansive Universe. I will put a link to that at the end of the video as well. So be sure to check that out. And big thanks to Rainbow Starlight for sponsoring this week's videos. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and start talking about Star Wars Armada Clone Wars possible commanders, because this is really fun, right? Now, we've already seen a few previews. We know about Kraken and Obi-Wan are already going to be commanders, so obviously I'm not going to mention them. But I want to start out with the Republic and say, well, I'm pretty sure we're going to see Anakin Skywalker. He obviously led lots of troops in battle. He's obviously the main character of the entire saga, pretty much, especially, well, I mean, I guess from a certain point of view, Rex and Ahsoka are the main characters of the Clone Wars, but I think definitely Anakin is, like, the main character of the overarching saga that's going on here. So he's hugely important, and obviously you're going to see Anakin at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if Anakin isn't all that dissimilar from Darth Vader, how he appears in games, somehow giving you rerolls. But since he hasn't embraced the dark side, maybe he doesn't have that cost. Maybe he doesn't force you to have to spend a token to do it. But at the same time, maybe since he's not getting the full power of the dark side, maybe it doesn't let you reroll anything. Maybe it lets you reroll, 2 dice or something like that, which would still be awesome. It'd still be really awesome, because heck, there's upgrades that just give you a single reroll, and they are awesome too. I think if he was going to give you maybe even a single die reroll for every attack, and that would stack with anything else you got, that sounds awesome too. I'd love to see something like that. That'd be, because he's definitely more offensive oriented. So I would expect Anakin to be a more offensive oriented commander for sure. Yoda, I mean, we got to see Yoda, right? We've been wanting to see Yoda forever in lots of different games. I think Yoda definitely, there's a lot of people that wanted to see Yoda in the Galactic Civil War factions, even though he really wasn't seen on board starships, so it made it a little bit of a harder of a sell. But I still think it's okay if they wanted to put him in there, but obviously this is the place to put Yoda. And I think I could see him as more of a defensive commander, definitely probably a more expensive commander too, somewhere probably costing close to what Palpatine costs as far as power, maybe a point or two less, but I could see him having some really nice little type of maybe refresh a defense token or something like that. I could see him having some type of defensive ability that would be very cool as well. Mace Windu, possibly another offensive-oriented commander, maybe a little bit more of a balanced commander, but yeah, I would love to see Mace Windu. I have a harder time trying to picture exactly what his particular role might be, but the whole vapid style that he's got going on, he could do a little self-harm possibly if there was going to be maybe a kind of something in the vein of Jar Jar Rod, something that damages your ships but also does something really cool. I could see Mace Windu having something kind of along those lines, but maybe not necessarily. It's a tougher one. And also, by the way, I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? Let me know for each of these commanders, like what kind of abilities you think they should have, or if you see another comment that actually has a good suggestion, give it a thumbs up, and let's get this conversation going, because I'm just speculating here, and it's really just the beginning of the discussion, because I want to hear what you guys have to say. But I think Mace Windu would be awesome. I mean, he's one of my favorite characters, maybe my favorite character from the entire prequel trilogy, although it's really tough with Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's really tough because that's just so great also. But I mean, come on, it's Mace Windu, right? And of course, we gotta have Ahsoka. I went with green lightsaber Ahsoka here because as she was doing more stuff actually with the Army of the Republic, this is kind of how we saw her for, maybe the biggest portion of that is still like the young girl version of Ahsoka. And it's really cool. I would expect them to do something with her with squadrons. I think she would be a squadron-based commander because of, well, she has this one move that's really talked about extensively in some of the Thrawn books, where she basically takes that Venator, and it's got the launching bays on top, and the enemy ship's over here, so she turns the Venator to the side, and then launches squadrons, but the other ship is over here, so they can't see, so they don't know that she's launched squadrons, and so all of a sudden, by the time she turns around, those squadrons have already picked up momentum, and they're going around, and boom. and they're doing that. And so it's basically she's got like a surprise squadron launch ability. So I would definitely imagine her to kind of mimic that particular maneuver. That would be a really cool thing. I think that they could do for Ahsoka, make her a good squadron commander. I'd like to see that. But hey, look, we're talking about the Republic here. We can't all be Jedi, right? I mean, it certainly seems like they're going to have some non-Jedi specific stuff, and that's cool. I don't think we're going to see too many of the named clone troopers show up as commanders because they're not like naval commanders. I just don't really see that happening. But hey, we do have people like Yularen. I mean, I think Yularen is absolutely going to show up, and it'll probably. Like a lot of people wanted him to be a commander in the Imperial side, and I'm like, no, man, he kind of changed roles, but I think like this is definitely the time to make him, to make Yularen the that commander who's that non-Jedi commander. Maybe he's more geared towards non-Force stuff, depending on what kind of Force-based antics. If they put the Force as like a thing in here, or if they just make Jedi just doing cool things as commanders, that's fine. But I think Yularen might be like more of the traditional Armada playstyle. He's like, you guys lay that magic aside. I'm going with conventional weaponry, and he might, be that commander that just applies to an entirely different playstyle. I wouldn't mind seeing something like that. Now, if he's going to have any similarities to his existing officer in the Imperial side, he might deal with tokens, might deal with refreshes, but honestly, they could take him in an entirely different direction, considering he switched career paths. He could do quite a bit of different stuff. So I think that's a good option. Similar, also, you could have Tarkin. Tarkin made his young man kind of debut in the Clone Wars, and so we got a kind of a different look at him as a strategist, and he was just a captain in this one. So he could be cheaper than Tarkin in the Empire. They could make him similar, but maybe he's got some different tactics. Maybe he's more refined and wise, and maybe a little bit more lazier in the once he's an old man. Well, lazy is not really a good word to apply to Tarkin, but things change once you get to like the level of Grand Moff. You don't have to get your hands dirty anymore. But here he was still a younger man and might still have to get a little more involved. So he could have a very different. A very different play style as Captain Tarkin. Well, plus he's going to have a whole different faction to deal with. But it would be interesting to see if he did something related to tokens, at least in some fashion, because that would be, like at least a little throwback to the Imperial version of Tarkin. So I think that would be pretty cool. And I wouldn't mind seeing some clone captain. Off the top of my head, honestly, I can't think of any named clone captains, but you do see them from time to time, at least for smaller ships. It could just make a great cheap option, a good 20-point commander that's not particularly spellbinding or breathtaking, but maybe has some synergy if you're running a lot of clone officers. And if they do boarding parties, which I do expect they'll do, I think you'll probably see like Rex or Cody, and maybe Wolf or some other named clones at some point. I mean, they're doing boarding parties for all the other factions, so might as well do boarding parties in Clone Wars also. So maybe he could have some similarities or some synergy with that. I think they could do something like that. That would be kind of fun. And that's all I've got for Republic right now. There's plenty more they could do, but I don't think every Jedi is going to be a commander, just like not every named clone is going to be a commander. There's lots of other spots for characters, such as boarding parties or unique weapons teams or officer slots. Officers, I think, is a great way to just add lots of cool characters to this game without them necessarily having to have naval experience. So that's a cool thing. For the Separatists, we only know about Kraken so far. So obviously Grievous. Grievous was in space battles all the time. So he actually had a pretty equal part of hand-to-hand combat as well as naval space battle combat. So Grievous is obviously going to be there. I would expect actually. I'm gonna call a ship. I think we'll get Grievous with the Malevolence, because that was like his flagship, right? That we see at the beginning of the game. I don't know how long it'll take us to get something as big as the Malevolence. I hope they do a push to make the Malevolence actually come sooner rather than later, because I think the game could really benefit from another huge ship, something, because then it'd be really fun to see people take the Malevolence up against the Executor. Oh, I really, really want to do that. That would be super fun. So I look forward to the possibility of that someday happening. And if that does happen, it would make great sense for Grievous to show up with that. I think Grievous would be some type of attrition. Like he would, similar to how Officer Darth Vader works, how he'll choke out his own people. I think Grievous would do that as a commander, so he'd be more expensive, and maybe he would choke out officers and get some really nice benefit from it. It's hard to say what benefit, because at one point, Officer Vader can choke out people and get reroll lots of stuff. So like rerolls are really good. So what are you going to get for, maybe you get like 4 engineering points or something like that for choking out a droid or something like that, or killing a droid. Like I could see something like that being a thing that maybe Grievous ends up doing. Which would be pretty interesting. Dooku, obviously, it makes a lot of sense. Dooku should definitely be a commander. And let's also say that whatever kind of Force shenanigans, if there's a certain theme for very characters that are very strong in the Force, then I would expect Dooku to be like the biggest player here, at least in this regard. So Dooku makes a lot of sense. There are a couple of other Force users that we do see, and the Separatists, I don't expect them to have a whole lot of Force-sensitive commanders. While they do have their share of, Force-sensitive individuals and lots of red lightsaber-wielding people, I just don't see them a lot of those other people, like Maul or Ventress, really commanding fleets as much. Even Ventress, while she was aboard many ships, she usually wasn't commanding fleets. She was usually like sneaking aboard an enemy ship to try to, blow its power core or rescue somebody or kill a Jedi or something like that. So I don't know if they'll do somebody like Ventress or Maul or Savage Opress or anything like that as commanders. I think those types of characters will probably serve as boarding parties and maybe officers or maybe multiples. Of course, also named squadrons also, but not as commanders. And since this video is about commanders, that's kind of what I'm focused on. I think Trench is definitely a must-have. And I'm kind of going with his Season 7 look as opposed to his original look, because I'm sorry, but his Season 7 look is so much better. Here's a dude who has learned from experience. This dude, Trench was cool. Trench was a really good tactician. Trench might be the Thrawn of the Separatists. Something kind of like that. Maybe a different take. They may go in a whole different direction, but he is quite the tactician and strategist. I think Trench is going to be amazing, and I would look forward to something like that. Techno Union, Wat Tambor. I think we're definitely going to see Wat Tambor. He was even actually, I think, mentioned when we got one of the spoilers. They were talking about Wat Tambor a little bit in the Techno Union, and so I think, obviously you're going to see droids somehow play a part of this, whether there are droid boarding parties, and of course we know they have assassin droids and all kinds of ways that they could do stuff like that. He might play a part, obviously interfacing more with droids. Maybe also he could end up being somebody who's pretty good with squadrons too, or at least certain types of squadrons. Maybe he'll affect squadrons with like an android keyword or something like that. That's a possibility. Speaking of squadrons, I also wouldn't be surprised to see Newt Gunray. Maybe he would come with, and if they're going to do him, maybe they'll do him with, with the big space donut. So again, who knows? But yeah, no, I think Newt. I mean, honestly, it doesn't have to be Newt Gunray. You have Lot Dodd, you have Lock Durd, you have a lot of other Neomoidians that you could do. So it doesn't necessarily have to be. It doesn't have to be Newt Gunray specifically. And maybe, I mean, I think there's a place for Sidious. I point out Sidious instead of Chancellor Palpatine, because I don't see the Chancellor as really being in charge of a fleet. They could absolutely do that, and they could do some kind of dual faction thing like they did in X-Wing, where he's a double-sided card and you can, different things can happen. And it would be interesting, but it'd be kind of cool if he's doing some kind of pulling the strings. I mean, and that's a keyword he has in Legion, Palpatine has in Legion. But he'd kind of do a thing if he could, like, manipulate the other side a little bit. Like, if I guessed what you did, then I get a bonus for that, or something like that. And that could be, so he's just playing mind games, trying to control both sides of the fight. It would be a lot of fun. All right, guys, well, those are my predictions for some of the different commanders that we are likely to see. I'm sure I missed a few that are great suggestions, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. Well, there's lots of other potential candidates. Maybe they weren't in the Clone Wars as much. I mean, you did have a young Akbar that did show up at one point in the Clone Wars too. I just don't know if he was in there enough to make it into Armada Clone Wars, but If the game keeps going for years and years, then you never know. But I want to hear what you guys think. What commanders do you think are going to be in? Did I get any predictions that you agree with? Or what do you think about their particular powers? I would love to hear more in the comments section below. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you today. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Also, big thanks to Rainbow Starlight for sponsoring this week's videos, and big thanks to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing, and I will be posting some news of some of those giveaways soon, so be sure to check those out. All right, guys, thank you so much, and as always, have a great day.